Shabbat Shalom. We are living in a deeply tense and uncertain time. And this time is not so unlike the time we're reading about in the Torah this morning. When we left Egypt, God led us to cross a great sea. And we walked through that cold water and those parted, pulsating waves on either side, dwarfing us with their height and volume. And with our hair still wet and our eyes still burning from the salt water, Miriam played her timbrels. And we tried to imagine freedom, even though we couldn't see very far ahead. We certainly couldn't see the promised land yet. Today, we are experiencing another time of enormous tension and fear. I can't tell you how many people have shared with me that they're afraid, and including myself, I am too. But I find a lot of comfort in knowing what you've heard me say before, and I'll keep saying, which is that we have been here before. We have. However hard it is now. We are a few weeks into a fraught and long-awaited hostage return agreement between Israel and Hamas. And many of us are feeling cautiously optimistic as some of our hostages return home each week. Please God, more. And like many of you, I am living each day with questions. Will the agreement hold? Will Hamas return 3 more hostages next week? Will the returned truly be able to heal from their trauma? Will we truly be able to heal from ours? The uncertainty magnifies and multiplies, and on into the future. Will we know peace in our lifetime? Will our children? In the United States, here, we are only a few weeks into the term of a new president. Now, some of us are pleased about this change in administration. I won't feign neutrality. I am not pleased, but I am willing to listen if you are. But I think we can all agree that we feel the precariousness of this political moment. And many of us feel afraid in a newly intense way. If we are immigrants ourselves, or if we love immigrants and we fear deportation, if we are LGBTQ or we love LGBTQ people and we fear having our identities erased from public discourse or losing our civil rights, if we work for the government, and I know there are quite a few of our community who work for the government, and we fear losing our job security or the chance to work hard and retire one day. However we voted in November, these days, there is a chaotic atmosphere in the air that's palpable. And at times, it feels like the chaos even transcends politics, like in the recent tragic wildfires and plane crashes. The tension in the current air it feels like, when you have a bead of sweat on your eyebrow and it's going to fall down your face, but you don't know when and you don't know where it's going to go, and you just feel this building tension physically. We have been here before. Looking back to Miriam's time, what did she do to help uplift and inspire the people in the desert? She crossed the sea carrying her timbrels, ready to dance and sing even in the most agonizingly anxious moments. And today, her story reminds us that although we can't see the future, there is something we can do. Miriam made sure to bring musical instruments, these timbrels, so that once the people reached dry land, they were ready. We read in the Torah that Miriam the prophetess, Aaron's sister, took a timbrel in her hand, and all the women went out after her to dance with the timbrels. And Miriam chanted for them. Sing to God. At the end of their terrifying path through the water, Miriam and the women already had timbrels in their hands. They were already prepared to dance and to sing. And that's it. That is one of our essentially Jewish ways to navigate uncertain times. Now, I know it might not seem like a serious enough answer. I know that. But it is serious. In the darkest and heaviest times, we must make sure that we have our timbrels ready. We have to take joy as seriously as we take all the hard stuff. In the last 2 weeks at Bethel, despite the trying state of the world, we have done this. We have taken joy seriously. We've been here together doing it. We celebrated Rabbi Harris and Sarah Rourke on the Shabbat before their wedding. And if you were here, you know that the couple was absolutely glowing during their ufruf. And they still are today if you see them. I'm sure you've seen them today. Rabbi Harris and Sarah are both here. The sanctuary was full, and I'm certain that the cries of Mazel Tov, Siman Tov, Mazel Tov, I'm sure that they could be heard all the way down Old Georgetown. And that same evening, we came together again for the Bethel Gala. We schmoozed and cocktailed the night away, and we listened to a Broadway star while scooping from our tiny dessert cups. You know the cups I'm talking about. And it was so much fun. When these exuberant, sparkling times are afforded to us, I can hear myself and I can hear, some of you think, well, maybe it's frivolous. Maybe it's not serious enough for our serious times. But it's not. In the words of Jack Gilbert, a 20th century American poet, we must risk delight. We must have the stubbornness to accept our gladness in the ruthless furnace of this world. Quite an image. And our world does feel like a furnace as the heat spreads and sparks and swirls. But the challenge is, as Gilbert puts it, to find a way to still accept our gladness, even in the furnace. And I would argue that as Jews, we have to do more than just accept the gladness. We have to plan and prepare and work for that joy. After all, how did Miriam and the women find those timbrels in the desert? Is this really realistic? They just happened to have musical instruments? They just found them in the middle of the desert? Remember, this is the part of the story is that they were so rushed that they couldn't even wait for their bread to rise. So how did they think to bring musical instruments? What's going on there? So I'm not the first one to ask this question. A 3rd century midrash in a collection called Mechilta de Rabbi Ishmael asks this question, much before I did. How did they have timbrels and dance instruments in the desert? Being tzaddikim, righteous ones, and knowing for a certainty that God would perform miracles and mighty acts for them when they left Egypt, they readied timbrels for themselves, meaning in advance. And according to a modern midrash by Rabbi Risha Groner, who is asking the same question, where did the ladies get these timbrels, tambourines, and drums from when they were previously in a land hostile to their traditions and celebrations? Nobody spends the hours of drum crafting, slowly threading sinew across skin and wood frame, without an intention to use the magical instrument. Miriam and her posse had a plan, and that plan involved redemption. When they danced and embodied the joy of liberation, they also celebrated the faith that they had, the knowledge that a world of freedom existed just on the other end of the dark, scary sea. and that it was possible if only they created the tools to use on the other side. She's saying that the women expected that there would be an occasion for celebrating. Miriam could see beyond the hard times when others could not. So I invite us to ask ourselves, what would Miriam do today? What is the equivalent today of readying our timbrels? And of course, timbrels don't have to be musical. You all understand metaphor. But one of my metaphorical and literal timbrels for me is live music. Karen and I have been known to travel near and far for concerts. We devote time and energy to making sure that we experience the music that we love as often as we can. For me, in the middle of a show, like time stops and my troubles dim. As the sensory experiences of the concert draws me in, I feel transported to other happy times at other shows throughout my life, and I've been going to concerts since before I could walk. And I feel the time fold in on itself, and for the length of a song or a set list, I feel at ease, at home, and content. It's beyond time and place. You could even say it's transcendent. But it takes a lot of work to get myself to the music. I have to reserve seats at whatever specific time the fan presale opens. I have to sometimes book flights and hotels, make up work in advance, ask a friend to watch our dog, Benny. I see one of them right now who watches Benny. But I have no doubt that all the work readying my timbrels is worth the investment. I heard a beautiful kavanah from Rabbi Yosef Goldman, a former local rabbi at Shaarei Torah. Maybe some of you know him. And it was inspired by the Rabbi Nachman of Breslov. When despair threatens to silence us, we must still sing. Even if only the smallest spark of vitality remains, even if the heart feels hollowed by sorrow, the act of singing is what keeps the soul alive. And he calls this a spiritual strategy for survival. I love that. In our Jewish story, when we crossed the sea out of Egypt, the promised land was only promised. We could not yet see the end of that chapter. And today, we cannot yet see the end of ours, not as individuals, not as a community, not as the Jewish people, and not as Americans. We can only know our past, our unsteady present, and a blurry future. So what do we do in times of uncertainty? How do we ready ourselves for another sea crossing? Miriam and the Israelite women had a wise and beautiful answer a long time ago. Joy. We're hearing some joy from the kids outside in the hall, too. Together, we believe in and expect. We prepare and we work for joy. And like Miriam, may we always bring a timbrel to play along our way. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you. Amen.